Hi, this is Amanda with A.J.E What We Do. Gus and I are going to take a look around the garden here because we want to just kind of get a little bit of an update as to how it's all looking and how things are producing. So I'm actually starting outside my fence here because I wanted to take a look at how the pumpkin and the acorn squash have kind of taken over this area of the garden. But you can see my pumpkin here. I did small pumpkins this year, so you can see the size of this is smaller. I've got one here, and then we also have one that's on the ground there. But those have come in. We also have a lot of acorn squash, so some of them are growing into the fence line. Some of them aren't going to get that big because this one, see, it kind of got stuck there. So I'm going to have to come through and just do some trimming. But we've got the acorn squash that has come along the fence line and is using that as its guide, as its climb. So that's kind of interesting how that has all developed. Come over here to the fence again. Hey Gus, what you doing? He doesn't like when I go outside the fence because it means I've separated from him. Hey buddy, come on, let's take a look. So you can also see the acorn squash has come here along the ground. I'm going to come through, trim up some of these pieces that are definitely not ones that we're going to want to eat. Clean up some of the leaves have started to go. You see, my garden, I do like low maintenance. I don't do a lot of effort into it. Might be able to produce more if I spent more time devoted a little bit to keeping everything pruned and neat. But it's what it is. I have other things to do, and it actually does pretty well considering. Also, my beans are starting to look a little bit withered just because their season's ended. The peas, one dried out and the other one did not, so I'm going to be able to pluck out some, but not everything came through. My kale came back. My kale had been destroyed by those, not the cicadas, but maybe the moths, and yet it came back. I did let the romaine go a little bit too long, so that has started to flower, so we're going to need to leave that alone. But I've had some bees that have been coming over here and pollinating, so I'm kind of leaving some of these as they flower, just so, because it seems like the bees are enjoying them. I'll probably end up, when I go and do cleanup, get rid of those. My corn did better this year than last year. I actually have some. If you see here, has turned yellow. Oh, there's another ant again. Some of it dried out, so a little bit hiss and miss, but last year we lost all of it. So I'll take this as a win. Also going to come look at this corn. Had some that came in on this side, had issues with this creeping Charlie vine. It's actually been coming from my neighbor's yard, so fortunately that's something we've had to deal with. But all in all, not too bad with the corn. Also even had the corn up here near the little, the tassels at the top. We've had some of those that have turned into corn on the side that's on the garage. So that's a little odd. I'm not entirely sure why it did that, but it's interesting that it did. Either way, I'm hoping that the rest of the corn here is good to be able to harvest here soon. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. We also had the basil came back strong. So basil had really been eaten, like my zucchini there that never came back, by some of those bugs, and you can see how it's doing really well. Green onion, same thing. I've been pulling those to use for some different stir fries and chicken tacos I had the other night. My cherry tomato, I'm waiting for some of those to start to turn red, but we do have quite a few, all things considered. How the cherry tomatoes looked questionable, like if they were even going to come in. And then I've got a bunch of Romas that are showing. They're green. Hopefully those are going to be ready here soon. Oh, Gus, what are you eating? I also had another tomato plant that popped that I hadn't planted, but you can see I've got some tomatoes showing on that. This is over by the potatoes, which I'm going to dig up here this week. And then my strawberries, the leaves are looking really, really healthy. Not going to get another crop of strawberries this year, but I keep the leaves looking really, really good. Keep this watered so that way we have strawberries that come back next year. Oh, Gus, what are you doing? He loves kale, so he was super excited that this came back. Let me see if I can get him a decent piece here that hasn't been eaten by a bunch of things. We'll do this one here. I always like to look at it, make sure there's no bugs actually on it before I give it to him. Hey, buddy. There we go. Oh, is that a good piece of kale? Yeah. You want the other piece? There you go. Good boy. Oh. See, Gus likes his veggies. Such a good boy. So I'm doing some cleanup, and one of the interesting things, so the strawberries had gotten very leggy. They were coming over here to where the potatoes are. You can still see them in the back there. What's interesting is once I cleared out some of those, you can see my potatoes are even like above the ground at this point. They have overgrown their space. This one actually does not look to be in that good of shape. This is a red potato that's there, but looks like some of the potatoes are ready. I'm gonna have to get in here and dig up what I've got in the ground because obviously it's here. But yeah, after clearing that out, you can see just how much the strawberries were way overgrown into the potato space. You can see where the peas were. They were very, very dry, the ones that were there in the middle. I cleared those out, just did some cleanup on what we already had on there. We're gonna leave the other peas that are going and see if we can get those a little bit bigger before we pull them. We also came over here and cleaned up. There was one corn that was yellowing, was definitely drying out. There's another one in the back that I'm probably going to have to take down as well. Just that way, leave the nutrients that are in the soil for the corn that is doing well. We've done a little bit of a fire, just some other trees that were in the back alleyway that we cleaned out. So I took the ashes and I mixed some in where we had the zucchini that didn't take, but also where we do garlic. So I'm going to have time for that to really soak into the soil before we plant the garlic in November. You can also see I dumped some over here where we would typically have cucumber. I'm going to pull these weeds that we have here and mix this in pretty good. Just add a little bit to the soil, give a little bit back. So I went back and pulled the garlic that we had hanging down in the basement. We pulled this from the ground in June. It's now August. So I just had it hanging so it can kind of cure. And then all I'm going to do, now that I've stopped that, is kind of pull away the first layer of kind of dirty garlic peel. And get a little bit, I'm trying to do this one-handed so I can video. Just get some of the dirt off of there, but still leave a little bit of the casing to hold the cloves together. And then I'm just going to be putting it in here. So I've got, let's see, 7 cloves, it looks like, all together from the garden, which is great. And then I'm just going to, like I said, remove these. We're going to get rid of all the pieces we don't need, all the stems, the extra layer. Just kind of clean it up a little bit for what I'm going to keep inside the house. And then that way we've got nice fresh garlic that we can use. So we dry it out in the basement just because A, it's cool, it's dark down there, it's not in the way. And then if you try to have it when it's too fresh, it's just very kind of wet almost when you use the garlic, and so when you go to chop it, it doesn't chop very well, and not as good a flavor in my opinion. So dry it out before we use it. That way we've got good, clean, and crisp garlic, if you would, that I can use in different recipes. These are smaller than what you would see in the store, and that's okay. I don't really add a lot of extra like growth hormones or anything like that to my garden, so I get what I get. It's usually smaller than what I would find in the store, sometimes even the farmer's market. A lot of those, they know what they're doing better than me. I just kind of am going along and doing it as I go along. So there we go, my little cloves of garlic ready to be used, and then all of this will go in the compost. So I just pulled some of the corn. You can see the corn that was in the back kind of started to dry out. So I'm not able to harvest any of those. I should have actually started this a week ago. The stuff that was here in the front was actually the husks are still green. At the top, you see how these have kind of browned out. So you want to get it while those are brown, although some of them are still like not fully browned out. And then while the husks are still green before they start to dry out. So the corn that I pulled out, and I did open them all out here because this is actually the first time I've harvested corn, and why not take a look at it before I bring it in the house. Plus we had those bugs earlier, so I want to make sure not to bring those any in the house. So you can see that the kernels were nice and yellow, pretty tight together on a lot of these. The ones that were further towards the fence line, the kernels are a little bit gappy at parts, which is really interesting since this entire row was all planted at the same time. So I don't know if it got something in that corner, but not everything developed, and that was pretty consistent. On those two stalks back there in the corner, you can see I've got just on one side it might look okay, and then you go to another row and it doesn't. But the ones that were up here to this front here, they were a lot cleaner, what you would typically see in corn. See, these have started to dry out a little bit too. So I'm pulling these pretty much just in time. I'm going to come through also and do the ones on the side of the garage. I had planted these the week after the ones in the garden box. So because I did the back 1 week, then the front another week, and then that the third week, those are actually probably good to go as well. So we're going to see how those turn out. Okay, so this is one of the kernels or corn cobs I just pulled from over here on the side of the garage. You can see it's yellow, so yay, that's a good indication there. But the other thing is when you need to test to see if corn is ready, what you want to do is actually just get into it a little bit. Like you can even just kind of cut a little hole. You don't necessarily want to open it all up because you want to keep insects still from getting inside of there. But if you have like a milky kind of substance in a kernel, that means that it's actually ready. So if it's clear, it's not ready yet. If it's dried out, you let it wait too long. So that's a pretty good indication to tell when corn is ready. So these are looking pretty good. I'm going to start pulling these. Well, so this was the corn that was on the side of the garage. You can see it actually all looks pretty darn good. Even the bees seem to like it because they're coming over. So those seem to have turned out really, really well. I still have on some of the stalks a lower piece of corn. So I might leave those just until this weekend and see how those do. But everything is actually looking pretty good for these. I think I'm pulling them at the right time. So this is the corn that was looking good that we're going to use for corn on the cob. You can see that they're still looking good. It's got them washed, got them ready to go. Going to add a little butter, a little paprika. Those are going to be amazing. And then the other corn that kind of had like that weird look to it, I've taken the kernels off of the corn cobs. And I'm going to use these for like soups or chicken pot pie or something. So we're going to freeze them. I'm going to move them to a different container. I just use this to help store them while I was doing all the work. And then that way these are going to be good for me later in the year. Some nice fresh corn out of my garden. So I pulled my 2 pumpkins today. They're cute. They're small. Just so you can see my hand here. For size comparison, we did mini pumpkins this year, so I'm going to be putting those down in the basement so they can kind of chill for a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to be able to puree the pumpkin inside. That'll be for my dog Gus. We also pulled potatoes out, so you can see I've got a few potatoes here, and these were all from scraps from the from last year when I peeled some potatoes around Thanksgiving time for a couple of those meals, and just threw them in the garden. You can see how well they're doing since then. Oh, we got a visitor bee just flying around. I also had a bunch that were just small. So these I'm actually going to just put back in the ground. So that way they can come back in next year. Come back over here where we have the potatoes. You can see I dug those all up. We also had a fun little tomato plant that came in over here. Actually, looking at it, I thought originally it was cherry tomatoes, but those might be Romas. So all my tomatoes are a little delayed this year because of the cicadas and the resulting insect infestation we had from all the other insects this year. So those will be right there. Hopefully they can come in before we get cold weather. And then I'm just going to come over here. You can see I have it all dug up. But right now I'm just going to put the potatoes here, but we're going to end up putting those back in the ground so they can grow next year. The other thing I wanted to look at is coming over here to the other tomatoes, and I finally have a couple cherry tomatoes ready to pick. So we've been waiting for these. So we're starting to turn red. You can see I got a Roma tomato back there. Those are getting bigger, but none of those have turned red yet. So it has begun though. I have 2 cherry tomatoes. We have potatoes. We have pumpkin. We had corn. You can see I've taken down the corn stalks. I've been very, very busy. And then we also have, my basil came back, which yay. I'm gonna pull some of these so that way we can have some pesto. So we did have some stuff that came into the garden this year. Not everything we wanted, not everything we planted, but we had quite a bit that came in. So, and more still to come, which is great news for me. So this was Amanda with A.J.E, What We Do. I'll talk to you later.